She pushed her cleaning cart through the gleaming corridors of Meridian Industries, invisible to the executives who hurried past in their expensive suits. For 6 months, Thessaly Morgensen had mopped their floors, emptied their trash, and listened to their careless conversations about cost-cutting and employee redundancies. Today, Regional Manager Brad Kessler had finally noticed her long enough to fire her for inefficiency and attitude problems. In 2 hours, she would walk into the emergency board meeting as the company's billionaire founder, ready to clean house in an entirely different way. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories about justice served cold and the powerful learning humility, please subscribe for more tales of hidden identity and sweet vindication. The morning had started like any other for Thessaly. She'd arrived at Meridian Industries at 5:30 a.m. before the executives began their day, when the building belonged to the night security guards and the early cleaning crew. Her cart was stocked with industrial-strength cleaners, microfiber cloths, and the kind of determination that came from having a purpose most people couldn't see. To everyone who noticed her at all, she was just Tess. A middle-aged woman with calloused hands and grey-streaked hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her uniform was standard issue: navy blue shirt, matching pants, and comfortable shoes designed for hours of standing and walking. Nothing about her appearance suggested wealth, power, or the fact that she'd built this company from nothing 15 years ago. She'd been Thessaly Morgensen then, fresh out of MIT with degrees in chemical engineering and business administration, armed with patents for revolutionary industrial cleaning compounds and a vision for disrupting an entire industry. Meridian Industries had grown from a garage startup to a multinational corporation under her leadership, employing over 50,000 people worldwide. But success had brought distance. Corner offices, board meetings, and strategic reports had separated her from the people who actually made the company run. So 6 months ago, she'd done something unprecedented. She'd hired a management consulting firm to run day-to-day operations while she went undercover in her own company. The results had been enlightening and infuriating. Tess, the sharp voice of Brad Kessler cut through her thoughts as she cleaned the executive conference room. What the hell do you think you're doing? She looked up from wiping down the mahogany table, maintaining the slight stoop and deferential posture she'd perfected over the past 6 months. Cleaning the conference room, sir, like always. Kessler strode into the room, his expensive suit impeccable despite the early hour. He was young for a regional manager, probably early 30s, with the kind of aggressive confidence that came from an MBA and a complete lack of real-world experience. In the 6 months she'd observed him, Thessaly had watched him take credit for other people's work, blame subordinates for his mistakes, and treat support staff like furniture. The board meeting isn't until 9, he snapped. You should have been done in here an hour ago. I'm sorry, sir. I had to clean up after the late meeting last night. There was. I don't want to hear excuses, Kessler interrupted. This is exactly the kind of inefficiency that's dragging down this department's productivity metrics. Thessaly bit back the response that came naturally, that she'd been the one who'd implemented those productivity metrics in the first place, and that they were never meant to measure the time it took to clean up after executives who treated conference rooms like personal dining areas. I'll work faster, she said instead. No, you won't. Kessler pulled out his phone and began typing. I'm documenting this incident. You've been warned about your attitude before. That was news to Thessaly. She'd never received any warnings, formal or otherwise, but she'd learned that facts were often inconvenient obstacles to people like Kessler. Sir, I don't understand. What attitude problem? The way you look at people, he said without looking up from his phone, like you're judging them. It's unprofessional. Thessaly almost smiled. If only he knew what she was actually thinking when she looked at him. I apologize if I've given that impression, she said carefully. I'm just focused on doing my job well. Your job is to clean and stay invisible, Kessler snapped, not to eavesdrop on executive conversations or ask questions about company policies. The eavesdropping he referred to had been her attempts to understand why customer satisfaction ratings had plummeted 30% in the past year. The questions about company policies had been her trying to figure out why 3 experienced department heads had quit in the past 2 months. She'd found her answers, unfortunately, and they all pointed to people like Kessler. "I understand, sir." "No, I don't think you do." Kessler finished typing and looked up at her with undisguised contempt. "Which is why you're fired. Effective immediately." The words hung in the air between them. Thessaly felt a familiar surge of anger. The same feeling that had driven her to build this company in the first place, when people had told her that a young woman couldn't succeed in industrial chemicals. "Fired?" she repeated quietly. "That's right. Your employment with Meridian Industries is terminated. Security will escort you out, and your final paycheck will be mailed to your address on file." "May I ask why?" Kessler's smile was cold. "Inefficiency, attitude problems, and insubordination. Also, I've had reports that you've been asking other employees inappropriate questions about their salaries and working conditions. That's not your concern." Those inappropriate questions had revealed that Kessler had been systematically underpaying the cleaning staff while reporting full wages to corporate, pocketing the difference. She'd also discovered that he'd been forcing night shift workers to work overtime without compensation, threatening to fire anyone who complained. "I see," Thessaly said. "Clean out your locker and wait by the security desk. Someone will be down to escort you out in 20 minutes. Kessler turned to leave, then paused. "And Tess? Don't bother using me as a reference. I won't have anything positive to say." After he left, Thessaly continued cleaning the conference room with mechanical precision. Her hands moved automatically, spray, wipe, polish, while her mind processed what had just happened. 6 months of careful observation, of documenting problems and identifying solutions, had just been ended by a man who exemplified everything wrong with the company she'd built. But perhaps it was time to stop observing and start acting. She pulled out her phone and sent a text message to a number that very few people had access to. "Emergency board meeting, 11 a.m. Full audit required." The response came within seconds. "Confirmed. All board members notified. Legal standing by." Thessaly finished cleaning the conference room, taking particular care with the head chair at the table. In 2 hours she'd be sitting in that chair as herself, not as the invisible janitor that Brad Kessler had just fired. The irony was delicious. She made her way to the employee locker room in the basement, past the security desk where Officer Martinez nodded politely. He was one of the good ones. She'd observed him helping new employees, staying late when needed, treating everyone with respect regardless of their position in the company hierarchy. "Morning, Tess," he said. "Everything okay? You look upset." "Just got fired," she said, not bothering to hide her anger anymore. Martinez's face darkened. "What? By who?" "Brad Kessler. Said I had attitude problems." "That's bullshit," Martinez said bluntly. "You're the best cleaner we've had in years, and the only one who actually cares about doing the job right." "Well, apparently caring isn't a job requirement anymore." Martinez shook his head. "I'm sorry, Tess. That guy's been nothing but trouble since he got promoted. Half the night shift is looking for other jobs because of him." Thessaly filed that information away. She'd suspected the turnover problem was worse than the official reports indicated. "What about the day shift?" she asked. "Same story. People are scared to complain because Kessler's got friends in HR. But morale is shit, productivity's down, and customer service is getting complaints every day." "Has anyone tried to contact senior management?" Martinez laughed bitterly. "You think they care about what happens down here? As long as the numbers look good on paper, they don't give a damn about the actual people doing the work." If only he knew, Thessaly thought. She spent the next 15 minutes in the locker room, ostensibly gathering her personal belongings, but actually making phone calls to people who were about to have a very bad day. Her first call was to her head of security, instructing him to begin a comprehensive investigation of Brad Kessler's financial records. The second was to her corporate attorney, requesting a full legal review of all personnel actions taken in the past year. The third call was to her personal assistant, who had been maintaining her cover for the past 6 months. "It's time," she said simply. "Understood. Shall I arrange transportation?" "I'll take the metro. I want to arrive exactly as I am." "Ma'am, are you sure?" Perhaps you should change first." "No, they fired the janitor. They're going to meet the owner." At exactly 10:50 a.m., Thessaly walked into the Meridian Industries building through the main entrance instead of the employee entrance she'd used for 6 months. She was still wearing her cleaning uniform, still had her hair in a practical ponytail, still carried the calluses and cleaning solution scent that came with the job. But her posture had changed. Her shoulders were straight, her chin up, her eyes focused with the kind of intensity that had built an empire. The security guards at the main desk did a double take as she approached. They'd seen her hundreds of times in the past 6 months, but never like this. "Ma'am," one of them said hesitantly, "I think you might be in the wrong." "I'm here for the board meeting," Thessaly said calmly. "I'm sorry, but board meetings are for executives only. If you need to speak with someone about your employment." Thessaly pulled out a wallet that none of them had ever seen before and produced an ID card that made both guards' eyes widen. "Thessaly Morgensen," she said, "founder and CEO, Meridian Industries, and I believe I'm running late." The elevator ride to the top floor was silent except for the soft hum of machinery. Thessaly used the time to center herself, to prepare for what was about to happen. 6 months of playing a role were about to end. 6 months of watching her company be slowly poisoned by people like Brad Kessler were about to be addressed. The boardroom was exactly as she'd left it that morning, except now it was filled with 12 of the most powerful people in her industry. Board members, senior vice presidents, the chief financial officer, and the head of human resources all sat around the polished table, looking confused and concerned about the emergency meeting that had been called with less than 2 hours' notice. At the head of the table sat Brad Kessler. He'd somehow managed to insert himself into a board meeting he had no business attending, probably by claiming he had urgent operational concerns to address. His laptop was open, his charts and graphs displayed on the wall monitor, his presentation clearly designed to request additional budget allocation for his department. Thessaly paused in the doorway, taking in the scene. 12 extremely successful, highly educated executives listening respectfully to a man who just fired an employee for attitude problems while stealing wages from the people under his supervision. "Excuse me," she said quietly. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Brad Kessler looked up from his presentation with the expression of someone discovering a bug in his soup. "Security!" he called out immediately. "There's been a mistake. This woman was fired this morning for insubordination." Several board members exchanged confused glances. The head of security, who had arrived just behind Thessaly, stepped forward with a slight smile. "Actually, Mr. Kessler," he said, "there's no mistake." Thessaly walked into the room with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged there. She moved to her chair at the head of the table, the chair she'd been cleaning just hours earlier, and stood behind it. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying the authority that 6 months of playing a janitor couldn't completely hide, "thank you for coming on such short notice. We have some urgent matters to discuss." The recognition dawned slowly. Board member Margaret Chen was the first to understand, her eyes widening as she took in the cleaning uniform and the unmistakable bearing of the woman who'd hired her 5 years ago. "Thessaly?" she whispered. "Hello, Margaret." Thessaly's smile was warm, but her eyes were steel. "I apologize for the unusual circumstances, but I've been conducting some field research for the past 6 months. The results have been illuminating." One by one, the other board members began to understand. Expressions shifted from confusion to shock to something approaching awe as they realized what they were witnessing. Brad Kessler remained frozen in his chair, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. His laptop screen still displayed his budget request presentation, a presentation that Thessaly now realized was requesting funding for programs that didn't exist, equipment that had never been purchased, and staff increases that would never benefit actual employees. "I don't understand," Kessler finally managed. You're just the janitor. I fired you this morning for attitude problems," Thessaly finished. "Yes, I remember. You also mentioned that I'd been asking inappropriate questions about employee salaries and working conditions." She moved around the table slowly, her voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of controlled fury that made everyone in the room sit straighter. Those inappropriate questions revealed some fascinating information, Mr. Kessler. For instance, did you know that night shift cleaning staff are being paid 15% below the contracted rate? The difference between what corporate authorizes and what employees receive has been quite substantial over the past 8 months. Kessler's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. Thessaly reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small recording device. Fortunately, I've been documenting my findings. She pressed play, and Kessler's voice filled the room. Listen, these people are lucky to have jobs at all. If they don't like the pay, they can find work somewhere else. It's not like anyone's going to miss a few dollars from their paychecks. The recording continued, capturing conversations where Kessler discussed forcing employees to work unpaid overtime, threatening termination for anyone who complained, and boasting about how much money he was saving the company through creative personnel management. CFO Richard Barnes leaned forward, his expression grim. Brad, please tell me this isn't what it sounds like. It's taken out of context, Kessler protested, sweat beading on his forehead. I was just trying to improve departmental efficiency. By stealing from your employees? Board member James Morrison's voice was ice cold. By forcing people to work without compensation. Thessaly continued her slow circuit of the room. Mr. Kessler's creative management extends beyond wage theft. In the past 6 months, he's terminated 7 employees for performance issues. Would you like to hear what those performance issues actually were? She didn't wait for an answer. Maria Santos was fired for excessive bathroom breaks. She's a diabetic who needs to monitor her blood sugar regularly. David Kim was terminated for poor communication skills. He'd been asking for the safety training that company policy requires for all new hires. Jennifer Walsh was dismissed for attitude problems after she refused to clean up a biohazard spill without proper protective equipment. Each revelation hit the room like a physical blow. These weren't just personnel management issues. They were potential lawsuits, safety violations, and discrimination cases that could cost the company millions. And then there's the customer service situation, Thessaly continued. Mr. Kessler's cost-cutting measures have resulted in a 30% drop in customer satisfaction ratings. 3 of our largest clients are currently reviewing their contracts due to service quality issues directly related to understaffing and undertrained personnel. Margaret Chen shook her head in disbelief. Brad, how could you think this was acceptable? I was trying to save the company money. Kessler burst out, his composure finally cracking completely. My job is to cut costs and improve efficiency. That's what I was hired to do. Your job, Thessaly said quietly, was to manage people, not exploit them. She reached the head of the table and finally sat down in her chair. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone, the janitor taking her place as the owner of the company. For 6 months, I've watched this company from the ground up. I've seen how our employees are treated, how our customers are served, and how our values are implemented at every level. What I've found is deeply troubling. She activated the wall display, replacing Kessler's presentation with her own data. Charts and graphs appeared, showing productivity metrics, employee satisfaction ratings, customer retention statistics, and financial projections. We're not just losing money, we're losing our soul. The company I built was founded on the principle that success comes from taking care of your people. When your people are taken care of, they take care of your customers. When your customers are happy, your business thrives. The data was damning. Under Kessler's management, his region had the highest turnover rate in the company, the lowest customer satisfaction scores, and despite his claims of cost saving, the highest operational expenses due to constant retraining, recruitment, and customer service failures. Mr. Kessler, Thessaly said, turning to face him directly. You fired me this morning for having an attitude problem. You said my job was to clean and stay invisible. Well, I've been cleaning for 6 months, and I've found quite a lot of dirt. She pressed another button, and a new set of documents appeared on screen. Financial records, email communications, and personnel files that painted a picture of systematic abuse, financial misconduct, and gross negligence. These documents will be turned over to our legal department for review, she continued. They'll also be provided to the appropriate state and federal agencies for investigation. What happens next will depend largely on how cooperative you choose to be in remedying these situations. Kessler stood up abruptly, his chair rolling backward. You can't do this. I have rights. I have a contract. You have a contract that specifically prohibits wage theft, workplace harassment, and safety violations, Thessaly replied calmly. A contract you've violated repeatedly. Your employment is terminated immediately, and criminal charges may be filed depending on what our investigation reveals. You're making a mistake. Kessler's voice was rising toward panic. I've improved productivity in my department by 15%. You've improved the appearance of productivity by forcing people to work off the clock, Thessaly corrected. Actual productivity, quality work completed during paid hours, has decreased by 23%. Head of Security Morrison stepped forward. Mr. Kessler, we'll need you to surrender your access cards and company devices immediately. As Kessler was escorted from the room, still protesting his innocence, Thessaly turned her attention to the remaining board members. The shock was beginning to wear off, replaced by a mixture of admiration and concern. Thessaly, Margaret Chen said carefully, what you've done is remarkable, but the legal implications are significant. Thessaly agreed, which is why I've already spoken with our attorneys. We're implementing immediate remediation measures for all affected employees. Back pay will be distributed, safety training will be mandatory, and we're conducting a company-wide audit to ensure this isn't happening elsewhere. CFO Barnes pulled up financial projections on his tablet. The cost of remediation could be substantial. The cost of lawsuits and regulatory fines would be far more substantial, Thessaly replied. More importantly, the cost to our reputation and employee morale is already severe. We need to fix this now, before it destroys everything we've built. She stood and moved to the window overlooking the building's main floor, where hundreds of employees worked in offices and cubicles below. Every person down there matters. Every person down there contributed to building this company. When we forget that, when we start treating people as expendable resources instead of valuable human beings, we lose what made us successful in the first place. Board member Thomas Wright leaned back in his chair. So what's the plan moving forward? We obviously need new regional management, but this goes deeper than just replacing Brad. Thessaly turned back to the room. We're implementing a new management structure. Every department head will spend 1 week per quarter working in a frontline position within their department. Anonymous employee feedback will be collected monthly and reviewed by the board. And we're establishing an ombudsman program to provide employees with direct access to senior leadership when they have concerns. And you? Margaret asked, will you be returning to full-time CEO duties? Thessaly considered the question. The past 6 months had been exhausting, frustrating, and eye-opening, but they'd also been the most connected to her company's mission that she'd felt in years. I'll be splitting my time, she decided. 3 days a week in the executive suite, 2 days a week on the floor. I never want to lose sight again of what this company actually does and who makes it work. The meeting continued for another hour, with detailed discussions of remediation plans, legal strategies, and structural changes. When it finally ended, board members filed out with expressions ranging from thoughtful to concerned to impressed. Margaret Chen was the last to leave. She paused at the door and looked back at Thessaly, who was still wearing her cleaning uniform. You know, Margaret said with a small smile, I've been in business for 30 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this. Good or bad? Thessaly asked. Extraordinary. Risky as hell, but extraordinary. After everyone left, Thessaly sat alone in the boardroom, looking out at the company she'd built and nearly lost to people like Brad Kessler. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Officer Martinez. Heard you got fired this morning. That sucks. Hope you find something better. She smiled and typed back, Thanks. I think I just did. 3 hours later, Thessaly stood in the main employee break room, having changed from her cleaning uniform into jeans and a simple sweater. Still far from executive attire, but no longer pretending to be someone else. Word had spread through the building with the speed that only office gossip could achieve. The janitor who'd been fired that morning was actually the owner of the company. The regional manager who'd fired her had been escorted out by security. Emergency meetings were being held on every floor. "Excuse me," a voice said behind her. She turned to see Maria Santos, one of the employees Kessler had fired for excessive bathroom breaks. "Yes? Did you really own this place the whole time?" "I do own it," Thessaly confirmed. "And I'm very sorry about what happened to you. Brad Kessler had no right to fire you for managing a medical condition." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "I've been looking for work for 3 months. Nobody wants to hire someone who got fired for performance issues." "Well, you weren't fired for performance issues. You were fired by someone who didn't understand basic employment law. If you're interested, I'd like to offer your job back with full back pay and a formal apology from the company." Yes, I'd like that very much." Over the next hour, similar conversations played out across the building. Thessaly spoke with night shift workers who'd been forced to work overtime without pay, day shift employees who'd been afraid to take sick leave, and supervisors who'd watched good people leave because they couldn't stand up to Kessler's management style. Each conversation reinforced her decision to never again become so disconnected from the people who made her company work. As evening approached, Thessaly found herself back in the executive conference room, but this time she wasn't cleaning it. She was preparing for a company-wide meeting scheduled for the next morning, where she would address the entire staff about the changes that were coming. Her personal assistant knocked and entered. "Ma'am, there's someone here to see you. He says his name is Martinez?" "Send him in." Officer Martinez entered hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable in the executive suite. "Ma'am, I hope it's okay that I came up here. I heard some pretty incredible things today." "All true," Thessaly said. "Please, sit down." "I can't believe you were right there the whole time." Martinez shook his head. 6 months of watching that bastard Kessler push people around, and you saw all of it. I saw it, and I documented it, and now we're going to fix it." Martinez was quiet for a moment. "You know, when you first started working here, some of the guys thought you were maybe corporate spy or something. You asked too many questions, paid too much attention to how things really worked." "Were you suspicious?" "A little, but mostly I was just glad someone finally gave a damn about doing the job right." He paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why? You're a billionaire. You could have just looked at reports and fired people from your office. Why go through all this?" Thessaly considered the question carefully. "Because reports lie. Numbers can be manipulated. The only way to really understand what's happening in your company is to see it yourself from the bottom up. And now? Now we fix it, all of it, and we make sure it never happens again." Martinez smiled. "Well, for what it's worth, you were a damn good janitor, even if you were overqualified for the job." After he left, Thessaly stood at the window overlooking the city. Lights were coming on in office buildings across the skyline, each one representing thousands of people working late, going home to families, building lives around jobs that mattered more than most executives ever realized. She'd spent 6 months learning that lesson the hard way. Now came the harder part, making sure that lesson was never forgotten again. Her phone buzzed with a message from her head of security. "Kessler's financial records show systematic wage theft totaling $847,000 over 8 months. Legal recommends full prosecution." Thessaly typed back, "Proceed with prosecution. Ensure all stolen wages are returned to employees with interest. Make this a teaching moment for the entire industry." Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be interviews with employment law attorneys, meetings with regulatory agencies, and the complex work of rebuilding trust with employees who'd learned the hard way that their company didn't always protect them. But tonight, for the first time in 6 months, Thessaly Morgensen fell asleep without setting an alarm for 5:30 a.m. She wouldn't be pushing a cleaning cart through empty hallways tomorrow morning. She had a company to save, and this time she was going to do it as herself. 3 weeks later, the story broke in the Wall Street Journal. Billionaire CEO goes undercover as janitor, exposes widespread employee abuse. The article detailed Thessaly's 6-month investigation, the systematic wage theft she'd uncovered, and the reforms being implemented across Meridian Industries. Brad Kessler was arrested on charges of wage theft and filed for bankruptcy after being sued by 17 former employees. 3 other regional managers resigned under investigation. Employee satisfaction ratings began climbing for the first time in 2 years. And in the Meridian Industries employee break room, a small plaque was installed next to the coffee machine. Every job matters. Every person matters. Every voice deserves to be heard. It was signed simply, the management. But everyone knew who had really written it. The woman who'd learned that sometimes the most powerful position in any company is the one that lets you see everything while remaining invisible. Until the moment you choose to step into the light and clean house. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoyed this story about justice, hidden identity, and the importance of treating every worker with dignity, please subscribe for more tales of extraordinary revelations and the power of walking in someone else's shoes. Literally.